Then on the second to last page, number 6, I just need a little clarification on the wording. The council, city council may on its own initiative or upon the complaint of any person requiring a licensee to appear before the city council. The definition on that is, or the way I look at that is Joe Blow can walk up and he wants to file a complaint, and you better go before the city council. You know, the word complaint of any person. It's on number 6 on the second to last page.
Second last.
Yeah, I'm opening it to the procedure outlined in the foregoing subsection.
I think that's a fair point, and if we could change that to a verified complaint,
Okay.
so that someone makes a complaint and the city verifies it to be factual, then the city could, so it's not just like Jim says, somebody coming up and saying, hey, they were blowing up balloons and they don't have a license for it, you need to call them here on the carpet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on the current drafting?
Jim, could you refresh my memory as I'm sitting here? I kind of recall last meeting or maybe the meeting before, you had some issues and we're talking about business licenses. Did those get addressed as well?
Yeah, that goes into the next bunch of papers he has here, under the business license fee, you know, he has all these, I guess I go with this, all the copies you're gonna have to get for the state business license, perks, those and all that. When I got down into business license fees, you know, the broad categories, there's no dollar amounts, but under contract, my question was, and Shane did give me some paperwork, and he said, well, we'll work on that definition. It was on the handyman contractor. It says all contractor, contractor, all categories. I think that's too vague, because when I talked to Jennifer about a handyman, I believe she said, it was $5,000, but Shane gave me the paperwork here. The state is $1,000, and you know, he gave me some good backup on it. So I just didn't research it much more. I think before we go into each one of these categories and say, this is what we're going to do, we need to have some definition on the different categories of contractors. Because I believe there was an issue that previous council, Caroline, mentioned, dealing with subcontractors. Well, we don't have nothing in our policy about subcontractors. Well, they're still a freaking contractor. They're in the city doing business. So that caused a little bit of a, we need to look at this. So I guess that's why we started this here. But again, you know, so I stalled off. I haven't looked any further into the handyman thing, but I think that's one that needs to be verified because it is happening at this time in town. Handyman working in a guy's house for over 6-8 months, you know, so if that's part of the problem, that you know, because we go into here, the ordinance for having the building official serve criminal citations, you know, it was passed, or an ordinance on this here, and zoning, I mean, it gives him the authority to go back into something like Michelle mentioned, the people didn't want him in there. Well, where's the bite come? We got a handyman doing more than $1,000 worth of repairs, and he's not just fixing a sheetrock, he's remodeling the whole house, and he got away with it, getting away with it. That's
The definition is what you're thinking.
yeah, correctly. And so, I mean, if you go there and go to the building department guy and say, hey, listen, that house down there says right here, you got the short of the badge, you can go in there and shut this down. You know, that, so I don't know. I think, you know, again, you know, I appreciate the work on this, and the one thing I wasn't really too sure of, every time we tried to get a committee together, the city clerk had to designate who's going to be on the committee. You know, again, it pops up here, the mayor's like, well, we're working on something, we're working on him and Shane. Is that the committee? I think if we're going to have a committee, the rest of the council needs to know there is a committee, who the members are of the committee, so we don't got to hash this out in a meeting like this right here. This is just for discussion. I mean,
Well, if the council would like a committee to do this, that's perfectly appropriate, and they can ask to do that. This was just suggestions from staff, having viewed the issues kind of firsthand. And
That's a good start.
Yeah, it's just a
it's
start.
a good start. I mean, it's a start, we hammer it out, but if the staff is having a real problem, they should, you know, bring it to Jennifer, and she would relay them on to the council and so forth. So it's a good start. I mean, it's good open discussion. Does this basically mean we need to redo our whole business license?
I'll defer to you on that, but I believe it
Yeah,
is.
the intention is to see if we can redo the entire business license code. And so that's what we're writing, we're rewriting the code for business licenses. And so where it started and where we've been is with department heads and the discussions of the practical issues that have been run into with trying to implement the current business licenses, the complaints that have come in, issues that we've had. And so we've begun the discussion with department heads, and if the committee is needed, we could put that together. But we wanted to just make sure we presented the direction we're going. We do have some time with this one. We wanted to get far ahead of it as we went. So this is just our initial draft, and we've got plenty of time, I think, to work on it and address all the issues.
That's good, if you make the staff happy, everybody's happy.
We'll go ahead and open item 10 as well, because this is just kind of germane to the discussion. But yeah, one of the issues, so the council's aware that we've been having, is Julie, when she gets asked by someone, what does a business license cost? She can't tell people that. It's such a complicated calculation with frontage, and there isn't a city in this state that does it this way. I'm not sure how the city of Ely ended up this way, but having a simplified application and a fee structure, like some of the other cities said, well, I've got a restaurant, I've got this, and I've got that, and it's gonna be $300. Done and done. So we're not having to, carry the one and divide by two and stand on our forehead, and, hopefully down the line, we've got a number for it.
I like that idea.
And so with the application, with staff that we discussed, I again put together just more of a broad application to pull out things. The staff suggestion was not to utilize the first page, to let individuals find the different licenses that they need, but not to include that it could potentially just complicate things or different questions that would be had if people don't need one of these. Some are if applicable. And so one suggestion was just remove that and then go on to the business license fees and start there. And what the staff is doing is just compiling what we believe would be appropriate amounts for the different business licenses that we will propose with the next draft. As we look at those amounts, the main thing we wanted to get here was categories. And so Councilman Allworth brought up handyman. I think that's an important distinction as far as contractors. Some other ones that were brought up has been a dog breeder license or firearm services license. So anything else that's not contemplated, we can add to this list, or anything that we don't think we need, we can take. But that was just the idea, was to get a list started that we can start working with. Going through the application, the individual will be responsible for providing us with this information. And I think what's most important is there's an affidavit after that indicating that the individual is being truthful and honest with that business application. And what we've discussed is department heads is maybe putting a little more language into the affidavit, indicating that this individual does understand the other licenses that they need to get, the professional licenses, the state licenses, and anything else, and they'll make an affirmation that they have pursued and obtained the necessary licenses that they need prior to obtaining their city license. The child support information is required by federal law as well as the House bill that's run through the state. And we've talked about the sign-off approval sheet. We're going to make some changes to that, but that was just the idea to have an approval sheet from the fire chief for inspections, the chief of police, and any individual that would be needed to sign off, as well as emergency contact information. If we were to need it, if there were some emergency to business, we'd have information to contact that person. But again, this is just a broad idea of what an application could look like, and we'll work on that. And yet, the idea is to make it simpler so if someone comes in right now, just as the mayor said, it is an absolute unknown on what your business license will cost. And coming with this, you would have an idea of what that cost would be.
Is there any further discussion on any of these items?
No, I think it's a good idea because it's complicated, the staff's got a lot on their plate, we make it easier, maybe the businesses that come into town, they come right in, because they got people on the street hammering nails, we don't want to shut them down for too long, they come in, instead of a 3-hour process, do it in 20 minutes, that'd be great. And the biggest thing I want to support is the fact that we have local contractors in here, paying a lot of money, living here, supporting the community, And these guys that come in on the weekends and do stuff, we've gotta put an end to that. And if this is one way to do that, where we can, law enforcement contact them, say, hey, listen, you know, you can work through the weekend, but you better get to City Hall, it's only gonna take 20 minutes. You know, we gotta support our local businesses, and that's all there is to it. And if this is a way to streamline it, so people are more honest on what they're doing, I'm all in favor for it. Good effort.
I'd like to thank staff for all their work on this as well. With that, we'll move from items 9 and 10 down to item 11. Councilwoman Beecher, discussion for possible action. Approval to purchase Ford 2020 F-450 ambulance through HGAC buy program from Rocky Mountain Emergency Vehicles for the fiscal year 21 capital project funds in the amount of $208,734. That's not right. $208,735. There we go.
If I could, I called Chief Stork on this, I had some questions on this, he answered all my questions, okay. And City Treasurer trusts the money is in the budget, we allocated, the bottom line is the money is in there. I had questions, I said, okay, the cover letter from this guy, from this John Barson, the stuff he mentions on there, the refrigerator, the Q siren, so forth, Pat explained all that to me, but it's not in the written quote. Pat says, so I said, what happens if this salesman takes off? Pat says, he's the owner of the company. So he's not going nowhere, but Pat will talk with him, and he wanted me to give my note when he's back to make sure we can get that. I like to see it in the quote, and Pat says he would do that, but the fact that we need another ambulance, you know, that was proven just within a week, and we need to have ambulances, but, yeah. So anyway, I did talk to Chief Stork, and he answered all my questions to my satisfaction. My motion is to approve that. Thank you, Ed.
I'll second that.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion on this item?
I guess I got a question. Weren't we talking about splitting an ambulance with the county at one time, or did we ever do that?
Jeanette, you want to elaborate on this?
So, at one time when we had discussed it with the county, we budgeted $100,000 to split it with the county and ambulance. They decided, on their own, to purchase it themselves through grants, through the COVID, through augmentation from the fire district, to purchase their own, to put at the fire station. But on the flip side, they're taking back the one that we have, so that's still left us shorthanded. So what I'm saying, when Jim said he asked about the money, it is in the budget because we have the $100,000. We did talk about possibly putting that towards the purchase of police vehicles, but I think at this point that the need for another ambulance is pretty evident, so we can take that. The other money that's available was for the AED monitors that were budgeted in the capital project fund that got paid through the COVID money. So that's why there is money available for us to purchase this out.
Plus the price of the chief's vehicle did not come as budgeted.
Yes, the price of the chief's vehicles a little less than what was budgeted, so we have that too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We do need another ambulance, and it's just unfortunate too, because we put a lot more miles out, running out of the county than we would in the city even.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 12, Councilman Flangus, City Attorney Manuel, discuss and only review of staff suggestions on changes to the cemetery code. And I'll let Shane and Mike kind of give an intro here.
So, same thing, with this, we've had some issues and some questions regarding cemetery and the ordinances. We looked into the ordinances, and they were a little outdated for a couple different things, and so Mike really headed this up, and what you'll see in there is, I think your copy was printed out in black and white, but the gray, that gray is basically what's being added. And so the main additions you'll find in 8.1, 8-2-6, and then you go to F, G, and H. There are some additions there. And then the next section has one in subsections F and G, as well as burial requirements at the end. And a lot of the intention was to save time and efforts of those that are mowing and maintaining and caring for the cemetery grounds, and ensuring that they can do that while being respectful to those that are coming to mourn the losses of their loved ones. So these are just important additions, I think, to our cemetery code to be much more clear as to what is appropriate and isn't with the use of the cemetery.
Eric, same issue, not issues, I think a correction on, like we did on the first one. On the second page, under C, we got he and him in the first two paragraphs. I think, again, who's to say that that section was going to be a he?
Okay, and that's part of the old code, and if we're gonna make connections or corrections to the ordinance, we might as well make all of them throughout, and we'll make it gender neutral in there as well.
All right, and the next one is, on the page it is under 8-2-6. H didn't make sense to me. No plastic silk leather particles of cars from April 1st and October 1st, and it says right in the next paragraph, plastic silk or other article may be placed on headstone and cement bases at any time. It doesn't contradict itself on in that paragraph.
Mike had a good explanation on this. Part of the issue is that if it's not placed in the base, then they have to kind of mow around it or not damage it while they're mowing. If it's in a base, it's protected.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
you're
I
just,
no, I can understand that. That's a grass portion that you can stick it in there like on Memorial Day weekend. But the rest of that's gotta be, that's what that's saying?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll
I had a,
all right.
And now, my turn. I think the key on this is August 27th, 1912. You know, so on the first page, I think in 8-2-2 in section B, compensation, I think back then might have been like time to time, such sum as may be determined from time to time by the city council with the approval of the mayor. I think the city council has to finally say that needs to be turned around.
And that is part of the old code. We didn't.
Right, and that's what I mean, pointing it out, since it's not in gray. Down in C, right below that, the sexton, at the very last sentence, perform such other duties as the city council may require. Does that mean we can send to the landfill if we need be? Because that's the way it may be required to work in other areas. I believe they're almost all job descriptions. You know, as the city council may require, but I think it goes into the thing we're dealing with, the liaison thing, that the mayor's over the city councilman, and I say, hey, you need to go work on the street department, patch potholes. I think that just needs to be, it's part of the old code, I understand that. And then, one thing that got me, again, I don't mean to keep harping on delaying this meeting, but down in B, under health permit, they talk about burying the person. In addition, the certificate of purchase of a lot of graves, the production of a permit from the local health officer or other legally designated officer of the Washington state. We have to get that to bury somebody.
I don't know what permits you even require to bury somebody now, is there one?
No.
I mean, you gotta get the law, but I mean, the public health officer.
We don't have to do that.
Yeah, so that's an issue there. On the next page, I agree with what Ed said about that, but my question, where is lot J?
Down below,
The poppers,
yeah.
okay, and then, the city clerk will not issue that. Then whoever the request of the proper officers of the county, I don't know who that has to be. The city clerk, the county clerk, who knows what. And then, okay, down in 8-2-4, sale or repurchase of lots. Again, what Ed said by him, paid to the city treasurer before the last day of each month. That makes sense, but correct that properly. And then down in the same section, 3C1, 2, the charges for opening and closing for honorably discharged veterans of armed forces, you know. This thing, I think we need to really look at this here. These are veterans. They fought so we can sit here and argue over this stuff here. I think we need to, in front of the council, that opening and closing is, you know, the perpetual care, 625. I think we need to really look at the future of waiving that for all of our veterans that just on the discharge of armed forces. You know, I mean, there's not that many of them, but we got to show some real respect on that. That's something to kick around. And then on the next page at the top D, the city council authority required, the clerk shall not dispose of more than one lot to any person for turn order without first obtaining special authority from the council. That's something I have, what that means is, she can say, an Elks member gets a free lot, you know, well, I'll run it through the council. That's just a question. Then this one here is a good one, I think. Again, I'm harping on something from 1912, down in G, profits from the sales, short of the main connection with any grave or lot or other portion of the cemetery shall be paid into the cemetery fund. All monies placed in this fund shall be used exclusively for the care and improvement of the cemetery for proper cemetery purposes. We do not have a cemetery fund or a reserve in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, it's easy to sit at home and shoot holes in something like this, but that I had a lot of time to do in the last 2 days. On that 8.2-6 in the gray stuff, what about benches? You know, we had an issue with this probably my first tour of duty with the county. A lady wanted to put a bench so she could sit there and talk to her husband. Now I don't see benches anywhere in this.
I just kind of thought like monuments.
Benches was covered under,
There's a bench.
yeah, I saw that.
Okay, but really, I'm sorry I missed it.
Private landscaping is prohibited. This includes, but is not limited to curbing, trees, plants, flowers, benches, grass, rocks, wood chips, gravel, that's G, that's 8-2-6 G.
Unlawful. Okay, all right, and then, down there in H, on this next page after that, about the plastic flowers. This modern day and age, I think we need to include solar lights. You know, and I'm gonna tell you, you tell somebody they can't put flowers, whatever you wanna put on their grave between April 1st and October 31st, we better refer a fight. Because when we had this ordinance or a rule on cleaning the roads, getting the roads, hospitals priority, the cemetery was a priority. Those places, loved ones are buried there, and if you tell them they can't go out to put flowers on there, you better be ready for a fight. And I understand the mowing thing, because we do inside, but the set dates, they can't do this, because at one time, my first tour of duty, they had to have the flowers off at a certain date. They threw that out, the previous council, because those people put them out for a lot of money, they want to look at them, and at that time, again, 15 years ago, the section just threw them on the dump truck, and holy smokes, it was ugly. So,
Well, I think like we talked, Mike, wasn't it, that they can put flowers there, but they have to have a vase as part of their monument.
Part of the headstone or the,
inside the,
yeah.
You just can't
We're
go
not
stick
saying
them in the
no.
grass.
I can tell you through our research, we went through Winnemucca, Elko, Tonopah, Wells. We are the only ones that allow it. Winnemucca allows it, but they remove them on the 2nd and 14th.
okay, just give a heads up, I'll miss that meeting.
No, I hear you,
And
Jim.
then the last thing, the last page, and I'll be done for the night, is burial vault shall be required for each burial in any plot. I researched that a little bit. Those are actually, because I'm trying to ask, I can remember 2 vaults that were cement or welded, had to have a crane on them. Is that the type of vault, or are these those covers that go over the
These are
cover?
like a more of a fiberglass.
Okay,
The ladies across the street sell them,
all right.
and they're not the concrete ones, we don't have the equipment to put them in. These are very nice, bulletproof.
Yeah, because I remember 2 people, they had a welded vault. In fact, he welded himself for his daughter, and it took a huge crane and Sam brought it down. But so there's no, so a vault, no matter whether it's a out of steel or these fiberglass, plastic things, we do that all the time anyway.
Yes, and then we have had concrete from southern Utah, and they came in and put them in the ground first.
Okay.
It just helps with the seepage.
Yeah, right. Okay, now so it says Good cover. That's all I got, man.
Any other any other discussion on this item? We think we're working on this, and make some changes in the back.
And you will get that.
Probably pulling me flowers on my grave.
We'll move on to our last item, item 13, Councilmember City Attorney Manueli. Discussion for possible action, approve Dr. Dana Vitale, MD, service contract as City of Fire Department Medical Director. We already approved it, didn't we?
Right, so we already approved using him and contracting with him, we just didn't have a contract in place, and so now we have the contract and we can approve that. The contract is simple, it states the payment, the termination, potential termination, and the work that he'd be doing. It'll be important to have him on board.
I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll say it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. We'll move on to item 11, public comment. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. Any public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the building for my property located 490 High Street has not been corrected to date. I paid landfill billing for all the time that I had the property, including the penalties. You've treated others differently and removed penalties and interest. I have been diligent in telling you of the discrepancies, yet you continue to misbill me. My most recent bill is for $1,328.05, yet I pay every month. Again, you need to hire a person to bring in accounting as required by the New City Code. Today you approved write-off of penalty and interest of individual by the discrimination. When I bought the school, I paid for all fees. A week later or so, young Tom Bath, that purchased the Plaza Hotel, came in, said, gee, I didn't own it at the time. You should take off the penalties and interest. And I thought to myself, lots of luck. I needed lots of luck. You guys, meaning the city council, took all his late fees, penalties off. Not meaning his, but what with the property. I asked at that time that I be given equal consideration. To date, you guys have not done that. Again, Mr. Mayor, we either have rules or we don't. And you need to stop the damn discrimination or get the hell out.
What's your language, Mr.
I'm
Chairman?
going to keep going, mister. You're part of the problem.
Please keep reporting yourself.
Let's get some answers here, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the fire hydrant on the corner of Avenue K and Great Basin was not reinstalled back far enough to allow the proper width of Avenue K when Great Basin Boulevard is repaved and the curb and gutters installed. Again, rules and regulations. It juts out. You need to address that, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, at several previous meetings, I have reported that numerous RVs, possibly squatters, were setting up throughout the city. Again, how many of them did you bill for landfill, water, and sewer? I was billed by former city clerk Jim Oliver for the past when a renter of mine was visited by a friend in an RV that was parked alongside the property line. If no one was billed, then I want my money back with interest. The city and its staff must stop the blatant discrimination. You need to stop enforcing the ordinances under, you need to stop enforcing the ordinances selectively under color of law. Just across the street from Catholic Church, you got 2 RVs coming and going. What did they pay? You've got the Apposeki Trailer Park. That poor woman can't make it anymore. She's selling her business. That's discrimination. Yet a block and a half down, you've got an individual, Mr. Carson, put in modular homes in a trailer park. You had him have an RV in there at one time. Did he get a special permit? Was he a contractor? Mr. Allworth made the rules and regulations. I've yet to see anything. You need to stop the discrimination, Mayor.
Any other public comment? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to adjournment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
close. I think
Don't run away with the pen. I will.